Netherlands.
Yes.
And
yes.
this is your mom is going there
Yeah.
with you?
Yeah.
And where do you end up in the Netherlands?
I think it's still.
Yeah, I think it still stays on. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I moved to the Netherlands. We went to Amsterdam. First went to Amstelveen.
And you had traveled to the Netherlands before, or was this the first trip?
I went before because my grandfather, my mother's side passed away pretty young.
Yeah.
He passed away right before I was born, and he was a teacher. So my grandmother had a suspension. But before that, also my grandmother created a hotel. Rochaline was a hotel she had in bars, and she rented it out. So she was living a widower's, pensioner's life, doing some social stuff. For example, she created the first crash on Bonaire, so the first preschool. She created it. Why she created it? Because she noticed that you had at that time some domestic violence happening, which you have in every community. But the women were very dependent on the husband because the husband was the only income, and the women could not work because who would take care of the kids? So she created the Fundación Bom Cuido, so they could take care of the kids, so the women could become economically independent.
Very progressive.
And hence, very progressive. Always was. Always was.
Feminist, if you would.
Worked hard for it. And it's funny because that question is going to come later. How do you get in politics? Was never predetermined, but if everybody in your family continuously does things for others with no alternative motive, it becomes kind of second nature. You know, it's part of
you saw it all around you.
It's part of your calling to help people with things that apparently they cannot help themselves with. But we'll get to that. So she was living 6 months in Bonaire, 6 months in Holland, and she made it a life goal to see the world. She loves to travel, so she went to Hawaii, to Egypt, to Alaska, and my oldest brother, was her walking cane. You know, she was getting older, so my oldest brother
would travel.
Yeah, would go with her. You know, mind you, we're talking about those days going to a cruise, an Alaskan cruise. We're talking about. It's huge money, but she was in a position where she could do that, and she made it a priority that's what she wanted to do with life, see the world. Many of those places my brother went with her, but she was living 6 months here and 6 months abroad. And we went to visit her a couple of times. So I went to Holland already before.
So you've known it, yeah.
And I have family living there because 3 of my brother's sisters, two sisters, 1 brother, have been living in Holland for a long time.
Around Amsterdam?
1 in Amsterdam, 2 in Amsterdam, 1 in Amsterdam Rivierenbuurt, 1 in Amsterdam South, and 1 in Amstelveen. So all of them
around there. Yeah. So you go when you go there at 7 years old. It's not like a completely alien land. You know to some extent.
I know a bit of it.
You know a bit of it, but nevertheless, obviously, it's an adjustment from going from the small, free roaming, running around island of Bonaire to no, it was not.
No, why? Because I was educated when I was young. I was very free in Bonaire, but the education we got at home was of education of stand up for yourself, think for yourself. So even if you're 8, you have an opinion, and not because you're a child means that you're nobody's subservient. You're polite, but you're nobody's subservient. So to give you an example, I was 8, and back at that time, my mother had a friend, because back at that time we were supposed to call him a friend. But it was my grandmother's living companion, life companion at that time. And it was Humberto Ellis, very decent. I have very fond memories of him. And we were in Holland, and I was living in Holland for a while already, a year or something. And my grandmother came, and he came with my grandmother, so we went to visit him. So my grandmother had to do a couple of stuff, and I'll tell a story also about my grandmother and dad. That's also a life lesson. So my grandmother says, no, he's gonna he's gonna do a trip in downtown with me, and I'll be a steward. So I go with him. I'm 8. We're going to this cafe. Back then you had still the Dutch Gilder. We're sitting in this cafe, and he orders it. What do you want? I said, I want a Sprite. He takes a beer, nice beer in Amsterdam. It's summer, it's warm. And we're drinking it, and I see him, he's like counting the money and looking at, Counting the money, it doesn't. I seen his face that something doesn't equate. I asked him what's wrong. He says, yeah, the money she gave me back, it doesn't equate. Because if that means that the beer costs 5 guilders, that's too expensive. I said, well, go tell her something. He says, no, the Bonaire mentality. No, it's okay.
It's okay.
I said, no, go tell her. No. I said, give me. So I'm 8. I take the money.
And you go.
I walked to her and said, ma'am, beer doesn't cost 5 guilders. You gave him too little money. She said, oh, sorry. Here's the rest of the money. I go back. I give him the money. He goes like,
you give it.
Well, yeah, no, but he was so amazed that
you had
an 8-year-old
would have the ability to stand up for what he thought was.
That will be in the Bonairean culture not done.
Yeah.
A child of 8 doesn't go to attend to an adult and tell them, wait a minute, this is not correct.
Yeah.
While in Holland the mentality is, if you stay quiet, things stay as they are. Just open your mouth and stand for whatever you feel that you have to stand for.
But you were like that even when you were on Bonaire. It wasn't like Holland made you this.
Because
in the house you were
growing up in a house where
it was encouraged.
My father thinks like that, acts like that. My mother thinks and acts like that. My grandmother thinks and acts like that. With the grandmother, my father's side is the worst. Da She was a widow at 48 or something with 9 kids. Her husband passed away at 50, Julio. But I think she was one of the biggest influences in my life, in the sense that she was always stand up for yourself. Don't accept anything that's unjust. Stand up for injustice. Always. But she would defend you blindly against, not blindly in the sense without moral judgment.
Right.
If you're wrong, you're wrong. But, for example, we go home. It's a story my sister always tells because it happened with my sister. My sister comes, my father's in politics already. My uncle was in politics, both sides. So my sister comes home and she's crying. Why? Because one teacher, which is of a different political color, was picking on my sister. And my sister comes and she's crying. My grandma calls me, come here. What's going on? Yeah, the teacher, he said this and that, calling my father names. So she's like, 9, 11, 12. You're as a teacher, you're gonna talk bad about the girl's father. She feels bad about it. And my grandmother says, okay, what's the teacher's name? And then my sister tells her name, and my grandmother asks a couple of questions to find out who it is. She said, okay, go play. A couple of minutes later, you come. She calls you back. Listen, tomorrow you go to school. You tell the teacher that his mother is a whore. My grandmother. My sister looks at my grandmother with 2 eyes like, what did you say, grandma? Yes, because when the mother was young, she used to jump out of the window and go with this guy, and then 2 weeks later,
because she knows the stories of all
she knows about everybody. And anyway, the whole moral behind the story, what my grandmother used to say is, listen,
don't be a victim.
Don't be a victim. And of course, you're never going to use it. You're not going to go as a 10-year-old, go to it, you say, but it gives you such empowerment that, you say something to me.
Yeah.
It gives you an empowerment that, listen, you're not alone. And my mother would hear my grandmother said that, and my mother would like, Mom, you cannot tell a child to say that you're crazy?
Yeah.
My grandmother looks at my mom and says, but she has one. My grandmother was apologetic. Yeah. My grandmother, and it's not only my grandmother.
And that's a very strong influence that's there in your.
The Krana family have a saying. But it's true, right? So it doesn't matter what you say.
But it's true.
But it's true, right? Is it not true?
So the funny
so even how hard it is, how harsh it is, how painful it is, as long as it's true, it's the truth. I didn't hurt you, the truth hurt you.
And it's interesting you would say that the Krana family, because the phrase is sometimes said, but she's a Krana. And everybody understands that. Everybody understands that if you're a Krana, then there's something.
It's blunt. It's straight in your face.
But she's a Krana.
You don't mince words about it. And out of the 20 words, 12 will be for sure. I would actually say out of the 10, 8. But let's keep it. Out of the 20, 12 is gonna be curse words. But it's the truth. It's the blunt truth in your face, and it's hurtful sometimes. But there's
But they don't
also
make it.
the saying, right? It's also the saying, I prefer somebody hurt me with the truth than caress me with a lie. And that is something we really got from my
Well,
as long as
grandmother,
it's true. So
yeah.
why should we occult the facts? Because if you don't confront yourself with the facts, you can never solve it. And facts, truth, can be hurtful.
Well, this is interesting because one can see that 8-year-old acting in Amsterdam in this manner, and can see a 46-year-old. How old are you now?
42.
42-year-old who, in the Island Council, may be
doing the
acting
same.
the same thing.
Doing the same. For example, Nina is also descendant of Krana, and all the time we have conversations with each other, and we say at a certain point, and it's like I look at her as like, but did I lie? All she can do is laugh.
Yeah, because she knows.
And the other way around.
Yeah.
But did I lie? And the thing is, the funny thing about it is, in a discussion like that, as long as it's true, and I prefer you hurt me with the truth and caress me with a lie. And look, politics already has the perception of being
full of lies.
Full of lies.
Yeah.
I saw one of the,
just
they have I like it, one of the sewer trucks in the States, one of those states, they put on it full of political promises, but
a reputation. There's a reputation.
There's a reputation, or at least a perception. I don't know if it's because, look, of course, I agree. Politics is with a lot of
compromises,
back chamber,
deals and compromises,
saying something else while you actually mean something else, and we make it a really hard party line to not do that. I'll tell you this.
But that won't make you popular.
Weird, huh? The truth apparently isn't popular.
It's not popular because people want to hear caressing.
People like their comfort zones.
Yeah, they like the caressing of life.
People like their comfort zones. The thing is, if you've been living in this bubble all your life, this bubble is comforting because you know where everything is in this bubble.
Yeah.
And you just want to stay in your bubble.
Yeah.
But you will never experience how much more refreshing the other bubble is
If
until
you
you
never-
take the courage
Yeah.
to step out of your bubble.
Yeah, you use the word courage.
Yeah, but it boils down to courage, and that's what I mean. That the day that I have to sit there as an 8-year-old, and at that time maybe Umberto was in his 60s.
But you had more courage as an 8-year-old, maybe?
Well, but I think, and that's again coming back to my grandmother. What can happen?
What's
What's
the worst?
Scold me?
Yeah, what's the worst?
Okay, my grandmother scolds me every day.
Yeah, so
My grandmother used to call us, for example, my grandmother had 9 kids, so you can imagine how many grandkids she has.
Yeah.
How is she going to remember all their names?
Hey, you.
So she goes like, hey,
whatever.
She starts mentioning,
Yeah.
but she's a crane.
Yeah.
She starts mentioning 5 names, and then she goes like, hey, Mariko Binky.
Yeah.
So my grandmother lovingly called me.
Yeah.
What's it? Yeah. So okay, you're gonna scold me. Okay.
Yeah, big deal.
Yeah, but you just give me
Then ain't gonna-
nice
yeah.
Hi. So what can happen?
Yeah.
And the question is, and that's a question I ask myself daily. If I do it, if I do something, stand up for something, speak the truth, what's the worst that can happen? To me or to anybody? But the question is, what's the worst that can happen if I don't?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, what's
You
happening
can
when I
live. You
don't,
can live with what happens when you say the truth. You actually can't. It's just not you.
and it's even worse because if I say it, what will happen to me. Bring it. I can take it.
Been there, done that.
Sticks
seen
and
that.
stones.
Yeah.
But if I don't do it, what's happening to others?
Yeah.
Can they take it? And when I look around, I notice that it's breaking them. It's breaking my community. It's breaking my people. It's. I'm seeing a new generation coming up that doesn't have the privilege that my generation had. The privilege of freedom.
Yeah.
The privilege of dreaming. The privilege of mobility. When I was 8,
Social
I could
mobility.
get on a bicycle.
Oh, of course.
And I could go.
Anywhere.
My best friend lived on Kaya Corona. On Kaya. Of course, I wouldn't bike on the road, but I would go to Kaya Corona.
Sure.
Of course, my mom and they would also go like, "What? but I could still go.
You sure? You ran around all over the place. Yeah. The kids stayed up late out there, but nobody worried.
We used to go Friday night. I was telling a friend just lately.
It's insane that you can't. The kids now can't do that.
Friday night. You know where I used to go? Friday night at 8 o'clock. There's nothing to do. There wasn't a mobile back in that day, so it was literally the landline. You call each other at home, and you say, "What are you doing?" Yeah, there's nothing to do. Let's go to Klein Bonnet. Nor him nor me have a boat, but we want to go to Klein Bonnet. So, okay, which of our friends has a boat? No, maybe not even a friend has a boat, but who has access to a boat? And for example, you have Richard of Richard's Restaurant. Again, social entrepreneurs. They do business, but they're part of the community.
Absolutely.
So I lived in that neighborhood.
Yeah,
So
you just
me
got
and
a
my friends
hold
there, hey Richard, can we borrow the boat? He had an
Okay.
old Boston Whaler
Yeah.
with a 25 horsepower. Sure, guys. So
Beautiful.
imagine, this is the pastime of my youth. We get on the boat, 12 years old, 13 years old. Get on the boat, 4 or 5 guys. 8 o'clock, Friday night, not going to a bar, going to Klein Bonnet, chill at Klein Bonnet. You know, there's an old tire there. You make like in the thing. You make a small fire. You sit there with some marshmallows.
Beautiful.
Wholesome pastime within the nature. Let's go to Pink Beach.
Yeah.
You know, let's chill. So, can we do that now? Is the opportunity there? Is the freedom still there? Might be, but much less than it was.
Well, the direction is clear, right? I mean, which is that the direction is in less and less. I mean, that's the issue. But before we come to that and the consequences of losing that freedom and all that. So what happens as this 7-8-year-old is growing up in the Netherlands? You grow up there till you are
11.
11.
Yeah.
Oh, so
independent.
So 4 years.
We went there 4.5.
Yeah.
I went there. We went to Amstelveen first.
Yeah.
So my school was at Amstelveen,
Yeah.
Martin Luther King School.
Yeah. Schooling on Bonaire at that time was in Pavimento or in Dutch? What was when you was
the classes were giving in Pavimento, but all not formally,
Yeah.
But in the class, the teacher would speak Pavimento. I was at Reina Beatrix back at that time. So I moved to Holland. I went to the Martin Luther King School, which is in Amstelveen, because my aunt lived there, still lives there. I remember her address out of my head because I lived there for many years. And my aunt, that was the younger sister of my brother, was like the bastion in Holland of all family. So everybody of the family who moved there always
first point of contact.
Yeah. You can always, there's always a bed, but not only for us, but for the whole community, because they have a karate school, and everybody after karate school they eat, they can eat there. There's dinner anyway. Well, so we stayed there. I went to that school, but then afterwards we moved to another aunt's house, which was in Amsterdam, Rivierenbuurt.
To a different school?
No, and I stayed in the same school.
How did you go?
Get in the tram.
Aha.
And that's the thing. So afterwards we moved to Dalwijk.
10-year-old?
8, because I went when I was 7.
By yourself on the tram?
Again, by 8 and a half, my mother literally, first time she goes with me, she gets in the bus or in the tram, she shows me, okay, you have to take this tram here you have to get out, get this tram, okay, here. Well, that was the first time. The second time, she goes with me to the station, okay, remember this tram, and remember in 3 you have to get out. The third time, she would stand at the breakfast table and said, see you later, see you in the afternoon.
Wow.
Solve it. So with 8.5 years, when you're in the bus and you have to get out of one to get into the other to get a connecting bus, I'm arriving, but I see that bus already arrived at the station. So the bus will leave. I have to run up front, tell the bus, hey, can you give him a call and tell him hold on because I have to step. So with 8.5, initiative, independence, solve it. You had to, because I had an abonnement, I used to lose it regularly. So my mother gave me money for the bus ticket. Well, give a 8-year-old, a 9-year-old money for the bus ticket, but on the road to the bus station, there's a candy shop.
Also the candy.
There's a candy store.
Hello.
Those
tests have been done. Yeah.
So I was there with a handful of candy with no money to get on the bus.
Exactly.
But how do I get home?
Sales.
Solve it.
Yeah.
So try to convince the bus
driver
that I need to get home.
Yeah.
So it makes you very independent. It makes you very solution minded. It makes you also detach. Why? Don't forget, my mother and my father divorced, and you go to Holland for Bonaire. My mother stopped working when she was taking care of the children. So you come to Holland. Back then I was 8. That means that my brother was 16. You come there with 16 years of a hole in your resume.
Mm.
You ain't gonna get a job. So the budget was always tight. So it makes you very detached of anything material. Even the house we had a house in Belmer back then. Belmer was a social project, some flights high. And in the house it had three bedrooms, but there was 3 children and my mother. So how did we arrange that? It was one of the hallways, one of the entryway between all the rooms. My mother just let them close it off, and that became my room. So my room was kind of the hallway. Everybody had to go through my room to get. So you learn very early to value less. Even when we were in Bonaire, we used to stay at my grandmother's. 3-4 people in one bedroom.
But you didn't even think about it. You didn't even.
It was normal,
Yeah.
but it does make you detach in the sense.
Of material.
Exactly, and the common good. For example, my parents, when all of us were born, they created bank accounts and put money regularly in it for us to have a savings when we become in the adult years. We had to come to Bonaire when we had to move back.
Yeah.
My mother didn't have enough money.
Also, you took some of the.
Use the money. Yeah, but that's your birthright. That's your
Inheritance. Hello.
Use the money. Family will solve it. So it does give you a sense of community. It gives you a sense of shared interest. Not because you're a child, you don't have to put skin into it.
Yeah.
Actually gives you the sense like everybody puts skin in it.
Yeah. Because everybody benefits from it, and everybody's together.
Exactly.
So this togetherness is really, it's completely embedded in the very fiber of the being.
In my youth, before we moved to Holland, I used to share my bedroom with my grandmother on father's side. My grandmother used to stay at his house.
Yeah.
When we went to my grandmother's, so it was really a family thing.
Yeah.
It was really common.
Yeah.
And even that, also one lesson I remember from my youth. Don't forget, my father was in politics, but my uncle, he's married to my aunt, my father's sister, was also in politics. Their youngest child is my age, but we were best friend cousins. So while all politics was happening out here, he was either in my house playing or at his house playing.
Yeah.
I was sleeping over there, and so also a sense that
you can have your differences in one space, but
political differences don't mean personal enemies.
Yeah.
We can differ of opinion.
Yeah.
We can have different ideas.
Yeah.
We can have different goals, but still it doesn't mean that we have to be enemies because we are still part of one family,
one community, one family.
So I think all
that
those
balance
things,
between opinion, but at the same time affection.
Again, my friend, my grandmother, the husband of my grandmother on mother's side, was
the
the founder of one of the other parties. My uncle, so just for you to understand, for a child, you're going between not a supporter. I'm talking about founder. I'm talking about principle within the party. So it does make you think. It does make you separate things. Do not make things personal, because when something happens, or if you go too far, if you attack people personally, for me at least, if you make politics about the person and not the issue, you're directly hurting somebody that you directly know and love and care about. So it was a very early lesson that, wait a minute, that's a barrier you should never pass. You should never go there. And that is something that I miss in politics in Bonaire, because you notice it goes very fast.
It crosses over.
The moment that they cannot
get you on that
issue, they'll go on a person. I think as the active politician right now, I am the person that they've invented
more stories
about. Yeah. There's only a few things that I think they didn't try to attach to me yet. I'm still waiting for them to come, I enjoy the stories. It makes my life more exciting than it is.
So what? Going back into chronology. So you come back when you're 11, something
Go
like
to
that.
Curacao,
Go to
stay 1
Curacao,
year.
Stay 1 year. Then what happens?
And then when I went to Curacao at 11. At 12 years, I finished my primary school.
Yeah.
My mother was in
Middle
Curacao.
school.
My mother had a partner in Curacao,
Yeah.
and I said to my mom, I want to go live with my dad because remember I left in my dad's house. Before that already, my dad was very busy in politics, so I didn't really see him much. I never really experienced in a cognitive way life with my dad.
Yeah.
So I told my mom I want to move to Bonaire and live with my dad. And of course, telling my mom that broke her heart in a million pieces. Not so much that she didn't want me to go with my dad.
Just the fact
Because
that
my mother always and always possible stimulated a very healthy relationship with my father. Very actively, in all sense possible. Never one bad word about my father she ever spoke. So I moved to Bonaire and I went to live with my dad. My dad just came back because he had his own issues. He went to solve his issues and he was just coming back to Bonaire and he was just entering politics again. And I remember he came back to Bonaire, he went to live with my grandmother.
Which year are we talking about? Is it
92.
1992.
92.
Okay.
My father just came back and went to live with my grandmother in a house right in front of where my father lives now. And I went to live with him.
And you were 13, 12, 13?
12.
12-year-old.
12.
And you're going to school then on
I was
Bonaire?
just going to go to SKB. I moved from Curacao, came here to go to SKB, starting my high school, secondary school.
Yeah.
And I went to live with my grandmother. But you know, the thing is, that's funny, you know. I think the person I lived most with in my life, cognitively, was my mother and my grandmother. Both. My grandmother's.
Two strong women.
Wow, yeah. Very strong women. Taught me so much. I think the people I learned most from are both my grandmothers. One grandmother was very business-wise and also value of life. To give an example, there was one story. So this is a lady who owns a hotel. Owns a couple of Rochaline, where El Mundo is, and all that area. She is not in the operations anymore. She's renting it out. She has a good income out of it every month, above median. But every Christmas they make ayaka. So we're in Holland. She has to make ayaka, or for whatever. She said, "Let's go to the market." She doesn't go to the market in the morning nor after. She goes literally an hour, half an hour before the market closes. So, Grandma, wait, what? Yeah, because then they're closing. They don't want to take the product with them. Then is where you get the deals. So she was an entrepreneur. She is a person who had money, but she knew how to go good on about it to maintain and also standing. But she wasn't somebody posh at all. She had a couple of apartments here and she's living 6 months. So whenever she left, she just rented everything. And whenever she came back, she just took whatever was available. Whichever of the apartment was available, she went to live there. If none was available, she would go live in a kunuku. Mind you, a kunuku back in the 80s, 90s, solar panel, one panel, just to put the two lights in the thing. It had a fridge on gas. I slept so many nights with my grandmother in the kunuku. Working in the kunuku, she had tortilla, she had goats, she lived the most simple life. I think she was one of the most happiest persons. She loved family. We were always together, laughing. She taught us a lot about working hard, valuing stuff. So not because you have income, spend it, invest it. And she always said, one of the sayings she said, don't be afraid of debts. If you have debts, as long as you invest it in something that brings a bigger return than what debt is costing you, you're doing good. And from my father's side, my grandmother was don't take nothing from nobody, but she was one of the most intelligent person I've ever met in my life. She spoke like 5 or 6 languages. She would do crossword puzzles all day. I think she did it in 3 or 4 languages. She did it in Spanish and Dutch and in English. She would literally per day, one of those whole books of crossword puzzles on one day. Read a lot, knew a lot, moral compass, very, very, very strong woman. I think those two ladies
influence you more than anybody. I mean, these are very strong. So the basis that you have, which was a principled kind of base and a bit of a outspoken, self-confident thing, got even more reinforced by these two women
100%.
who basically kind of and you can sort of, as you said, you can see yourself being shaped by these
100%.
These two very strong.
100%. But my grandmother on my mother's side was less outspoken, so she would prefer to, okay, let's avoid the conflict, but let's work at it and make sure that it happens anyway in a different way. And my grandmother on my father's side was like, if it's the truth, you're allowed to tell it.
There you go.
And if they cannot take the truth,
there's the krana.
If they cannot take the truth, you're not the problem, they're the problem. It's not you. The truth can never be the problem. It's the one who finds the truth hurtful should really think about why does the truth hurt them? Because then something's wrong with you, because the truth hurts you.
Yeah, which is something we can see in some of your interventions in the Island Council. So what SGB like? What was schooling like at that time? Did you care? Were you did you goof off? Or were you,
I goofed off.
You goofed off. You were not really a book.
5 years. I went to HAVO. That was supposed to be 5 years. VWO was not possible. I got an advice for HAVO VWO, but over there you had no VWO, so I went to HAVO. 5 years supposed to be. I took 7 years to do it. I totally goofed off. I was just
having a good time.
Yeah. You know, I really, really enjoyed high school. Too bad the classes got in the way. You know, it was fun. It was fun. And what I liked most about SGB, how I remember it, and that's why when you got a little bit older, when I went to study, and I came back, I saw certain changes, not in the school, but in the populace. It really angered me. Why? In SGB, it was in my time, in our time, Bonaire is a migrant island, so people came from wherever they came from. You know, they came from Holland, they came from Colombia, they came from San Domingo, they came from Statia, they came from wherever they came from. So we're sitting there, you have the populace of the school, and we're sitting there, you know, a couple of kids, group here you have the rockers, there you have the nerds, and there, like every high school has, you know, some definition of this group, clans. But when somebody new arrives, it was like, oh, well, she must be lonely or he must be lonely. He's here on the island, he's new. Hey, come join us here. Hey, by the way, Friday we have a party, why don't you? It was inclusive. It was right away trying to, how can we
bring them into the community?
Bring them into the community, regardless where you're from.
Very open.
Everybody belongs at the end of the day.
And you see that change?
Yes.
In the schools also?
Yes. I came back, I went to study, went to Holland, and I came back.
So you finished SGB and then what happened?
I finished SGB, then I went to Holland to study. I went back to Amsterdam. I went to the HVA, Hogeschool van Amsterdam, at Amsterdam. Another troubling experience, a good life experience in a certain sense that you see. For me personally, afterwards, how imagine this. I was 19, you know, but first before I went to HVA, I went to VWO. I wanted to do VWO, but remember, I'm 19. I go there. The average person in VWO 5 in Holland at that time is 16. So there's a huge gap. One, I noticed it here in Bonaire, for example, when you got 5.5, and you go to the teacher and say, hey, you know, this one, if you count it half good, I can still get a 6. No, I'm not gonna get no giveaways. In Holland, you'll never get giveaways. So I arrive in Holland, and what I see is
full of giveaways.
Every kid is negotiating with the teacher to get not a half a point extra, 2 points extra, and the teacher's cooperating to give them a leg up in life. So you notice how we are sometimes
held back,
bringing our own back. We are keeping our own back. Because it wasn't the Dutch teacher telling me no giveaways, it was the local teacher telling you no giveaways, because when you're in Holland you won't get anything. So what is one thing of the Dutch community which is a very big part of the Dutch community, which is negotiating. In Holland, everything is a negotiation. Here you're teaching them no negotiation is possible. So we're
Take
not,
it or no choice.
and that's only in our community, because in Holland everything is negotiation. The kids negotiate with their parents daily. Daily. But mom, if I do this, then I can. But mom can.
So here's like shh.
Go sit in the corner.
Manamucha, shut up.
So that was one part of it. But also, I went to live in Amsterdam again, and the whole housing problem, it's very difficult. It shows you how difficult it is. So I went there, went to VWO, then I stopped after 1 year. I went to do HVA. I went to do management, economics, and law.
Yeah.
It was like a combination.
How long? How many? Did you finish?
I didn't finish that.
Yeah.
No, it was supposed to be 4 years. But I went there 1 year. Came into a housing problem. Anyway, my grades were good and everything, but because of the housing problem, I missed a couple of classes.
Yeah.
I had to flunk that year and start over.
You get this is crazy.
Well, I didn't even stop. What happens, and that's the biggest danger in Holland. I started to look for a job next to the school, but if you have certain talents and you know how to do sales already in a certain way, I got in while I'm at school. I got in as a seller, and then within 3 months they wanted to make me manager, and I got a car from work.
This would happen, or this happened with you?
Happened with me.
With you, it happened.
Happened with me. Within 3 months, I was manager, unit manager, and I had a car from the. And what happens, because one, you had certain abilities, but I speak 4 languages. So I'm there, and then, for example, they had to do a big marketing campaign for Yo-Yo, Yo-Yo Rage. But the guys, the champions do Yo-Yo, they're Portuguese, they're Brazilian, Polish, and Argentinians and Colombians. So they're looking for people who can be the bridge between the Dutch economy and them.
Perfect.
And actually, I can work with all of them. Perfect. So in Holland, it will be difficult for them to find a person who can speak at least English, or at least Portuguese, or at least Spanish. And in me, for example, you find all 3. Yeah. And even worse, if the guy is Brazilian, if I just speak Pavimento already, he understands 70%. Yeah. And sometimes I speak Spanish with him. He doesn't understand. I tell him, tell me in Portuguese. He tells me, I say, and I say, but how? Yeah. So the thing is, what happens is, if you have the right mindset, because let's be honest, skills you can teach anybody. Mindset, and exactly. Aptitude and attitude are things
early on.
Yeah, exactly.
If you pound.
If you get that into people, why? Because
it'll take
the skills you'll learn.
Yeah.
You can learn the skills to become a mechanic. You can learn the skills to become a dive master. You can learn the skills.
But if the spirit is still in you, if your
mentality is wrong, doesn't matter what skills I teach you. You will not have the added value. You will have value, but not the added value that's better for yourself. So, in school, difficult. Why? Because the difference is you're in class with kids who don't have school is finished. They go home to mom and pop, who wash their clothes. Everything's fixed. In the weekend, they can go home, and you're there,
sorted out for them.
And you're there, and you're stuck. And your best friend also lives in Holland, but he lives literally on the other side of the country. So it's 2.5 hours to get there and 2.5 hours to come back. But you only got a week away, so the weekends you're alone in your room. And they're alone. So it's psychologically, it's screwed up. So for example, a policy that would be nice if the local government would say, okay, nice, the Dutch government gives you a week away, but we will pay a weekend away.
So you can...
Because the thing is, most of these kids
are isolated.
The Dutch kids are living in Holland. They go to a college close to where they live.
Yeah.
So in their free time, they can go home
Yeah.
to their friends
Yeah.
and
They have a life.
their unit. They have a life. Literally, you're dropping our kids
In the middle of nowhere.
smack middle of nowhere,
With no connection.
no connection, no social.
Depression.
Exactly. So what happens?